The breath of the planet. Long before humans, before animals, and even before trees or grasses grew on land, the Earth was a very different place. If you traveled back in time billions of years, you would not survive even a minute. The air had almost no oxygen. The sky was filled with gases like methane and carbon dioxide. The oceans were dark and full of strange chemicals. Then something tiny changed everything. A group of ancient microorganisms began to do something new. They learned to take light from the sun, those warm golden rays shining through the early atmosphere, and use that energy to split water molecules inside their cells. In the process, they released oxygen. These tiny beings were ancestors of today's cyanobacteria, and they were the first life forms on Earth to perform photosynthesis as we know it. They began doing this billions of years ago, and they shaped the future we live in today. They were only doing what helped them survive. But over millions of years, the oxygen they released slowly filled the oceans, then the sky, and finally the entire atmosphere. Thanks to them, Earth eventually became a planet full of life. Before scientists understood photosynthesis, they didn't even know what oxygen was. People simply thought air was air, as if it were all one thing. The first clues came from simple but clever experiments. One of the earliest was performed by a man named Joseph Priestley in the 1770s. Priestley placed a candle under a glass jar. The candle burned for a while, and then suddenly went out. Nothing unusual so far. But Priestley wondered why. Next, he placed a mouse under another jar along with a burning candle. The candle went out even faster, and the mouse collapsed shortly after. When he lifted the jar, the mouse quickly recovered. Priestley realized that something in the air was being used up. He called this bad air. Today, we call it carbon dioxide. Then he did one more experiment. He placed a mint plant under a jar with the mouse. The candle still went out quickly, but after a few days, the air inside the jar became fresh again. The mouse survived much longer, and when Priestley lit the candle again inside the same jar, it burned normally. Something in the plant had repaired the air. Priestley didn't yet understand how, but he had stumbled upon the secret of photosynthesis. Bubbles of life. Another scientist, a Dutchman named Jan Ingenhousz, continued Priestley's work and made two important discoveries. Plants clean the air only in sunlight. It is the green parts of plants, mainly the leaves, where this happens. Ingenhousz placed plants underwater and watched them carefully. When sunlight hit the leaves, bubbles formed around them. Those bubbles were oxygen. But when he shaded the plant, the bubbles stopped. This was one of the first clear demonstrations of photosynthesis in action. Ingenhousz didn't know every step of the process, but he was the first to clearly connect plants, sunlight, and oxygen into one idea. Later scientists filled in the missing pieces: how carbon dioxide is absorbed, how water is split, and how sugar is created. Think of a leaf as a tiny workshop. Inside it are even tinier green workers called chloroplasts. Chloroplasts contain a pigment called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll acts like a solar panel that captures sunlight. When sunlight hits it, chlorophyll becomes energized and ready to work. Inside these chloroplasts, something magical happens. Light hits the chlorophyll. The energy is used to split water, HO, into hydrogen and oxygen. Oxygen leaves the leaf and enters the air. The hydrogen combines with carbon dioxide. Together, they create sugar, which becomes food and energy for the plant. In the simplest form, sunlight plus water plus carbon dioxide creates sugar plus oxygen. Plants use the sugar to grow roots, leaves, branches, flowers, and fruit. The oxygen drifts into the atmosphere, eventually entering the lungs of humans and animals. Photosynthesis doesn't work the same way every day. It depends on temperature, sunlight, and the changing seasons. Spring. As sunlight becomes stronger and days grow longer, plants wake up. Buds open, leaves appear, and photosynthesis starts again after the long winter rest. Forests begin producing more and more oxygen. Summer. This is the high season of photosynthesis. Long days, warm temperatures, and strong sunlight make plants work at full speed. Oxygen production reaches its peak. Scientists sometimes call summer the photosynthetic boom. Autumn. Days become shorter and cooler. Leaves turn yellow, orange, or red because chlorophyll breaks down. The green workers close the workshop for the year. Photosynthesis slows dramatically and eventually stops in many plants. Winter. Most plants in colder regions sleep. Some lose all their leaves. Keeping leaves alive in winter takes too much energy, so trees let them fall. During winter, they live off the energy stored in their roots. Without leaves, there are no chloroplasts, and without chloroplasts, almost no photosynthesis happens. Oxygen production in northern regions becomes very low. But Earth stays balanced because when it's winter in the north, it's summer in the south. You can watch how and why the seasons change throughout the year in our previous video. Tropical forests near the equator photosynthesize all year round. Some of the greatest oxygen producers on Earth live not in forests, but in the oceans. These tiny organisms are called phytoplankton. Even though you cannot see them with your eyes, they produce about half of the oxygen on the entire planet. Every second breath you take may come from the ocean. This is why Earth is often called the planet with lungs. Year-round photosynthesis, especially in warmer parts of the world, helps keep Earth's atmosphere balanced. But our modern world is putting stress on this natural system. High industrial production, car pollution, garbage in the oceans, and massive tree cutting all weaken the planet's ability to keep the air clean and full of oxygen. These problems make the Earth more vulnerable than it has been for millions of years. We may not be able to stop all harmful activities, but we can still do small things that make a big difference. When millions of people do small positive actions, the total impact becomes huge. Support us by liking and subscribing. It helps the message reach more people who care about our amazing planet.